Hi, this is Lamar, and you're listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. A third space is a term that refers to a safe space for people to come together for respectful dialogue in a spirit of listening, sharing, and learning. In this podcast, we explore what it means to have third space conversations, and we try to model them. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, share it, and of course, like it. The more people join us, the quicker we get to third space as a society. Now let's get to third space today.
Hey, Lamar.
Hey, Tom.
How is life in Kansas?
Oh, it's just hunky-dory. Things are copacetic. I'm pulling words out of the 60s. See if I can come up with something.
Hunky-dory. Hunky-dory. Oh, my gosh.
So it's fine. It's going well. How about you?
It's, pretty good. Pretty good. I'm getting excited about, we're seeing little signs of spring, which are really nice. And, one of my favorite things about spring is and your shirt reminded me of this, right?
Yes, my shirt was like fly fishing.
Is that kind of spring green that pops up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that
planted tulips this year. I can't wait to see if they actually come up.
Tulips.
Yes.
Wow. We planted some of those bulb things too. You can tell that I'm a master gardener. Some bulb things. I have no idea what was planted, but we'll see.
Oh, we'll see what happens.
Well,
I might have been there when you might have planted some of those.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Our spouses went out there and dug around in the dirt for a while and,
that's right.
and planted something. Completely forgot about. That's how much attention I pay.
Well, Tom, we have a special interview today. We're going to talk about kind of school funding and emphasis on private and public schools. This is kind of a follow-up from a conversation we had with Stephen Owens, a state senator, when he was on the podcast, and it piqued our interest. And so we thought, let's get a little bit more information. Let's understand how school finance works. Let's understand how proficiency scores have an impact and kind of what really matters on school success. So LaMonte Rothrock is going to join us today. Lamont's been a friend of mine for many years. We were colleagues in higher education when we were both in the kind of the student development area. He's recently retired, but not an unbusy person at all. And so he's going to come and kind of share with us a little bit about his perspectives on private schools, on public schools, and funding.
Great. So,
yeah.
I guess I know he's waiting in the green room.
He is. I'm assuming he got our gift basket.
I hope so.
Yeah, we try to be a little more creative this time.
Yes. Well, that's very nice.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and open the door to the green room and welcome LaMonte in. Hey, LaMonte, welcome. Good morning from the green room.
Welcome, Doc.
Yeah.
Hey, how was the basket? How was the gift basket in there?
I understand the idea. I'm a guest speaker, but 24 avocados in one basket. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with 24 avocados. They're expensive, but I'm not sure what we're going to do.
These are avocados from Mexico, so they're really good priced. And they're the better quality avocados.
Well, of course they are, but yeah, okay. I'm gonna have to have a party at my house with a lot of guacamole. That's all I know.
Oh, we're on a health kick these days. We're trying to help people become more healthy.
I've never experienced that before, but that's cool.
Lamar and I debated this. Would Lamont prefer caviar or avocados? And we said, certainly avocados.
Yeah.
Well, given it was his credit card.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that I have to spend $60 on chips so I can have the guacamole. Yeah. Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, we're so happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're really pleased. So, well, we're really glad that you're here today, Lamont. And we always, we introduced you in the opening, but we always give our guests an opportunity to rebut anything that we may have said, or at least, tell our listeners what you'd really like them to know about you.
Well, it's interesting in having these conversations with Lamar a bit about schools and proficiencies, those kinds of things. Um, so I was a music education major, K-12, vocal instrumental, taught in the classroom for 1 year, and then came back to do some other work in higher education. Went back, got my master's degree in counseling, and did 13 years of counseling in both middle school and high school. Went back and did another 12 years in higher education, and then went to a college preparatory privately paid, no state funding K-12 facility. That was interesting to be engaged with that. And then um, jumped into all the things healthcare and finished up really my career as a CEO of a retirement community here in McPherson.
Oh, excellent. Wow. I mean, I didn't realize that your background was so diverse like that. Music education to CEO of a healthcare facility. That is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I think again, looking at the whole K-12 issues, I've kind of been in and out of those topics, and
Yeah.
it's just an interesting discussion because I think I have a different perspective from the outside from different ways, and definitely with healthcare and all the federal and state funding challenges, and spending time in Topeka, which I don't enjoy doing, but it was quite the eye opener about processes and procedures in Topeka.
Yeah.
So Lamont, you were currently involved in your local education system at some levels as well,
Yeah,
on sites, right?
Yeah, we're in the process of going through bond, and they wanted me to be at almost all the meetings because of my perspective, but also because of 300 residents on our campus that are highly educated that most likely will go vote and hopefully in favor of improving our education experience here. Uh, I've been on site councils for elementary, high school, middle school, and that's been interesting to see the data and the information from a different perspective on the outside. And really, my grandkids were the motivation to be involved in that.
Oh
But
yeah.
when I left education, I told the elementary principal here about 4 blocks away. I said I've got to stay involved in education in some way. Could it be on your site council? And she said, "Oh, you bet." So yeah, it's been inside of at least the school district here in town. Um, yeah,
Well, I too am excited about the diversity of background you bring to
Yeah.
today's conversation, and for full transparency, we were having a lunch, I don't know, a month or so ago,
yeah,
and Tom and I had been talking about this conversation about school funding and about proficiency scores and about what drives funding to public schools, what drives it to private schools, and we had a podcast so we kind of touched on that. So our interest has been piqued, but we feel like we have more to learn. And so that's kind of what I was asking of you to come and share with us a little bit about your
yeah.
perspectives. One of the terms that we hear a lot is called school proficiency. And, I've spent some time on the Kansas Department of Education website. I've taken a look at, the assessment reports and outcome reports and all of that. And there's a lot of data there. Can you kind of help us kind of
I
understand
don't
what
know
we're
if
looking at?
I don't know that I can necessarily clean this up, but it is, yes, they have some pretty big goals in terms of
Mhm.
uh, English, language arts, reading, mathematics, sciences. They've listed outcomes. They've typically had a lot of educators sit on a group that design those outcomes, those goals, what they want
Mhm.
all Kansas students to accomplish and be proficient in. And most states are aligned that way. They try to get educators involved in that process versus people from outside saying, "Here's what everybody needs."
Mhm.
And so that's the first piece that I always struggle with. If you don't know what you're trying to be successful at and how you're going to measure it, it really puts the pressure on the school districts. Okay, you want us to be good at reading. What does that mean? And so again, I think that the challenge for our representatives at the state level and federal level is finding experts that they can trust, that they've been trained. And that's what I always struggle with, is that we have people in communities that have never gone through all the training and education to be educators, and they're telling the school districts what they should or shouldn't do. And my example in one of these school meetings was, I said, how many of you are heart surgeons here? Because if I'm going to have a heart attack right here, I want to know who can help me. Of course, nobody raised their hands. And I said, well, we've got a whole panel of people up there at the table that their entire training was for education and the best way to educate our kids. We have to learn to trust the professionals. And so anything that you want to accomplish, if you're not willing to trust the people who've gone to 12, 14, 18, 20 years of school to help these kids be successful, I really struggle with that somebody else thinks that they have the best way to do it. And unfortunately, really what we get caught up in is how much money is it going to cost? That's really what draws the people.
And that's kind of where the state steps in, is, where are the funds going to go, and what's it going to look like? And so from the state's perspective, how do they know where to dole the finances out? So in pure transparency, what Tom and I have been kind of wrestling with is, the idea of are the proficiency scores, should they be tied to funding? If the expectation of the state is for school districts to have certain kinds of scores by their students, should that be tied to how they're funded from the state?
So that's my answer is going to be very different than what they might be saying, because the answer is yes. Yes, the money should be tied to proficiency, but more money should be going to the lower scored school districts than the higher scored school districts, because it's about time. It's about it takes more time for people to learn something if they don't have the baseline skills. And so I use the analogy of an athlete. If your quarterback doesn't know how to throw the ball, are you going to spend less money and less time on that quarterback, or are you going to spend more time on that quarterback? Same thing is the reason that the proficiency scores are in some districts are lower is because the student population that they have is behind. And I think one thing in nationally that they're forgetting is these students right now that are, well, really since 2020, they missed a year and a half of school because of COVID, a year and a half of true face-to-face time with teachers. And this is about time. You want to improve anything, you don't do less time doing it. You do more time doing it. And so that's my concern is in the state of Kansas, they're looking at these scores and they forgot that the kids that they see these scores on are a year and a half behind. So the example is I'm a first grade teacher and I'm teaching reading, and I all of a sudden find out that 40% of the kids don't even know how to read. That was what I found out when I was part of the elementary school site council. Is I said, after we finally got back together, what are you noticing since COVID? And the principal said, we have first graders that should be able to read fine that don't even know the basics about how to read. So you look at the state scores and you look at those kinds of situations. There's a reason that they're not meeting the proficiencies, because you almost need to take the second graders and say, I want them to have the first grade proficiencies. So they are looking at data, and I appreciate that. That's a key, is that they need to be looking at this data. And again, I'm trusting that all those outcomes that they're wanting are valuable and valid. But there are reasons why, at least in the state of Kansas, that schools are behind and grades are behind. And then if you take that COVID, go ahead, Lamar.
Well, I was going to say, well, you had, in starting out this set of comments you made, you say you're going to maybe take an opposite response. So tell me if I've got this right. From what I'm hearing you say is that instead of penalizing a school district funding wise because of their lower scores maybe over time, that should be an incentive to fund those school districts, and not be blaming, but rather be encouraging and by funding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I would say that Topeka would look at it and go, wait a second, you want us to throw money at places that aren't successful. But one of the things that through all my work, and especially higher education, about who is successful in colleges is there is a direct correlation between financial wealth in a family and education
Okay.
levels. And that's what they don't, I don't know if they don't understand it or they don't look at that. So during COVID, those families that had their college degrees, their master's degrees, doctoral degrees, they were making sure their kids were learning no matter what. So if you don't have a good schooling background, you had a horrible experience, or you're working 3 jobs because of your
Right.
education level, you did not have the time during COVID to help your kids be successful. And so the issue is it takes time. So my comment to the elementary school says, what are you going to do to catch those kids up from a year and a half loss? Well, it takes time. And I said, okay, well, I can't keep the teachers after time because they have an agreement how many hours a day that they're going to be working and we're going to pay. And so I suggested, well, then we need to find tutors. We need to find retired educators in the community of McPherson to come in and start tutoring these kids after school, during lunch, before school, whatever it is, weekends, because it takes more time. And unfortunately, the system isn't set up to say, okay, we need the school day to be 9 hours in this school district because your scores are low. And we're going to send extra resources for you to pay those teachers to stay an extra hour a day, 5 days a week. If they really want to solve these test scores, it's going to take time. And unfortunately, time and money are typically associated, or unless you have an incredible amount of volunteers that would come in and work with these kids.
Have you seen that, your theory, your proposal, in play? And if so, has it been successful?
Well, in terms of more time,
Yeah. Have you actually
yeah,
seen, the
yeah.
schools invest in that?
So when I was at a middle school, I don't know, is it okay if I use the name of the middle school? Um,
Sure.
yeah, Heston Middle School. During that time of the early 90s, the state of Kansas came out with a program called Quality Performance Accreditation. And they said, you will be successful in reading, writing, and mathematics. Science wasn't part of it during that time. And so we sat down and we said, okay, we have 70% of our students have already mastered the levels that the state is expecting. So really the challenge for us as a school to meet the school goals is what are we going to do with the 30% that have struggled, don't enjoy education, or just don't have the proper training prior to coming to the middle school? And so we were the first middle school in the state of Kansas to meet all the quality performance accreditation requirements. And so everybody wanted to call, and it's not unusual. How did you do it? We're going to send teachers your way. We're going to have you train them. And I said, time out. Don't send anybody our way. If we're supposed to focus on reading, writing, and mathematics, guess what? We changed our class schedule to have 110 minutes for reading and writing, 110 minutes every day for mathematics. We taught the curriculum. They practiced the curriculum in the classroom, just like they would be doing homework at home. We evaluated and we retaught the information in that block of 110 minutes. And so if you want people to focus on something like anything, and I use the analogy, like I said, of sports, you can't get better at serving a tennis ball unless you spend more time serving a tennis ball. And so we didn't ask for any other resources, but in the community there, we decided we needed some after school things going on too, to even accelerate it further. We had 72 volunteers in this town of, I don't know, roughly 3,000 that came
Right.
after school and worked with kids. And so again, we didn't ask the teachers, but the teachers stayed after too in a lot of cases. So anyway, that's why I'm saying it's about time and focus and attention.
Lamont, I got kind of a different question here for you, I think.
Okay.
And that is that we all know those cases of students who never tested well that became really successful in college and really successful in life. And I often find myself wondering, is there a strong correlation between a student's ability to test well and their ability to be successful in college? Because there are a lot of exceptions to that. And what's your thinking on that? I think this relates a little bit to what we're talking about, but it was something you said earlier just made me think about it. Do we know, is there a causal relationship, or is it just is there a correlational relationship, or do we just want there to be a relationship?
Yeah, I think higher education wants to make sure there is a relationship, but if you also know, since COVID, most colleges have gone, testing isn't necessarily required to get into their
Oh, that's
institution.
right. Yep, that's
But
true.
there is a high correlation between test scores, grade point averages, and go figure, those are also correlated to family education levels and wealth.
Mm. Ah,
And so the question is, are there people that are successful and didn't test well? Always, always. My motivation to do well in education and go further in education was because I had a high school counselor that didn't let me take the PSAT test, and I said, uh, "Well, I need to take that," and she says, "Well, you're not going to college." And at the time, I had a dad who had a doctoral degree. My mom had a bachelor's degree, and my middle brother was working on his doctoral degree. And I said, "Oh no, I don't have a choice. I am going to college." And that has been a motivation for me. I didn't test well, Tom.
yeah.
And I still I hate tests. Um, but again, there's so many other things that even the state of Kansas isn't assessing that helps for success. Are you persistent? Do you have that grit, that grind to do whatever's necessary, even if you approach it a different way? But if you don't value education, you won't be successful in education. And so
Well,
again, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, here's a high five, because I did not test well either, ever. And in fact, when I graduated from high school, nobody in my family had ever gone to college. We were not
Nice.
an education oriented family, and in fact, the first college I got into, it was because I called up a friend of mine who was going to that college, and I said, "What would it take for me to get in that college?" And he said, "Just show up; they'll take anybody."
Well, it's a
Now,
good choice.
well, I'll. This is not a reflection on Kansas,
No.
but that school happened to be in Kansas. So,
Well,
Well,
and Tom, that ties into maybe not necessarily the direction you wanted to go, but the way that schools are financed in most states, it has to do with money that goes towards enrollment.
hmm,
And
That's
if your enrollments continue to go down, your resources continue to go down.
yeah.
And so
Mm,
yeah.
that's a challenge that leads to maybe some of our other discussion. But again, if I'll use examples in Kansas, and the school I was at in the college preparatory school was in Wichita, and then during the 6 years they had a mass exodus to Mays, Goddard, and Andover. So the families with high educations and wealth moved to the suburbs.
hmm,
That's pretty classic in terms of most states. And so they build these incredible facilities. They have the enrollment takes off, and so the funding takes off. And then you attract, in some ways, the best teachers because they pay more. And so there's a cycle here that money really is dictating success in these proficiencies, and it's also attracting the best teachers. And the issue is the state of Kansas is actually doing some things. If you're willing to go to designated school districts that have low scores, we will pay for we will pay for your loans that you had in college. So they're
mhm.
trying. It appears that they understand that you can't just take any teacher and put them in a classroom with the most difficult students that are behind, because it takes a lot of work with those kids. And so teachers just say, if I don't have to work that hard and I can go to this beautiful facilities out here in the suburbs, why not? And so going into especially the cities, inner cities, they are struggling both facility wise, testing wise. And so we need our brightest and our best going there. If they really want the state of Kansas to be here, they're going to have to work with this bottom group in a different way than they are currently doing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move a little bit into the funding of private schools and public schools. You were in both, and I think you mentioned that the private school that you were working at was not receiving any state either funding, or the parents were not receiving benefits through their taxes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and the school I was at was interesting in that one, at that time, 100% of those students had always gone to college. There was not a single student that never didn't go on to college. That's unique in some ways. Second, they intentionally didn't take state dollars so they could dictate the curriculum. And here's the interesting part. So we didn't have to have teachers that had teaching licenses. And of course, being an educator, I thought, well, there's no way they could be good teachers. Let me tell you, 5 of the best teachers in that upper school did not go through traditional teaching pedagogy. They were just incredible people that were dedicated and gifted. And I wished I could have driven my kids down and had those faculty, because they were incredible. So it's a different way of approaching it. But also, those kids were paying $15,000 a year to attend that institution. So there were resources, but they had some flexibility. How do we spend those resources? And what are we using to gauge success at that school? So, yeah.
So in Kansas, I think since don't hold me to this date, but I think since 2022, there's been tax credits available for families who send their children to private schools who are meeting a lower threshold financially, economically. I know there's legislation that's been introduced to open that up to anybody. I think up to like $8,000 of tax credits. Although I did just check, and it's going to go on hold. It's not going to be even heard on committee. I'll get out of committee here for at least another year, which would mean that anybody could get a
Right.
significant tax credit if they sent their child to a private school. Given what you just laid as kind of a foundation of thought here, how will that impact, other than taking the funding and dispersing it to private schools? How is it going to impact the public schools themselves, as far as who's there, who's teaching, kind of their success, being able to be successful?
Tom here. Getting to third space is always free. We love doing this, and it is a labor of love we hope makes the world a better place. We don't ask you for money, but we do ask you to help us grow our audience. Hit the like button, share the podcast, and subscribe yourself. All of these will help us grow. Thanks.
Well, again, there's a couple pieces on that. So if you understand, again, whether it's right or wrong, that there's a high correlation between family wealth and the years of education that they've had. So keep that in mind, is that if you're all of a sudden going to give money to people who value education, who already have money, to go to another school, you're taking if you look at 100% of those students, and if you take this 50% and now you take them off to this school that already was performing at all the proficiency levels that the state of Kansas wants, you have even a bigger problem here now, because you don't have these test scores to offset the average of. So all of a sudden, this school's average test scores just went way, way, way down. And so then the question is, well, we just need to close that school. No, those students need the help more than any student needs it. And that's what they're not understanding. And unfortunately, highly educated people with money, right or wrong, are probably influencing our politicians more than the families that are working 2 and 3 jobs and don't have even a high school diploma, and maybe had a horrible experience in education. So why would I want to show up to an education meeting and demand better things for my student because I had a horrible experience in that building? I'm not going inside a school building. That's the problem we have too. We're not hearing all the voices on these issues, because people who didn't have a good experience in school, they're not going to engage in these conversations because they don't want to get engaged in something that reminds them of a bad experience. So the financing really is the people who will take advantage of this are the people who don't need the resources in the first place. Sure, smart people will say, if I could go to the school I worked at for half the price, all over it. But here's the other problem, because the school I was at tried to do some things with students in the city of Wichita, mainly athletes, so that they could improve the athletic programs at the school. And they brought them in, having come from large public institutions, scoring very low. And they flunked out at our institution because we were teaching and performing at such a high level. They didn't have the training to be successful at our school. And so they're sitting here down here and they feel horrible. I'm failing classes. I'm getting D's. Even had a student that wanted to go to Division I athletics. And he said to me, so if I had stayed at my public school and gotten my B's and C's, I would have been eligible to go to Division I. But because I came to this college preparatory school, I am not eligible to go to those colleges and play. And I said, but understand, you are so much stronger academically from when you came here. Sure, you're getting C's and D's, but you are performing at such a high level since you came here. It's just you were so far behind. To me, again, that's an example, as if we took advantage of these resources and raised that bottom 30% up into the proficiencies, you would see most of the school districts would meet the state requirements, and you couldn't point fingers at those people.
I'm wondering, is this a good time to kind of broaden the lens to the national? So one of the things that Lamar and I became aware of, Lamont, was that in the 2026 legislative sessions, many states are considering whether or not they are going to opt in to a school choice provision that was part of the president's big beautiful bill. And some are opting in early. About 22 of those states have opted in early. Iowa, Lamar and my home state, opted in early. Some have not yet, including Kansas at this point in time. But I guess there's a two-parter here. One is, can you briefly explain to us what that school choice federal initiative would do? And then what would be the impact? What would be the implications of that school choice program for education across our states?
Well, again, first, that whole idea of giving choice basically says we've given up on the schools that aren't meeting those scores. That's literally what they're saying is, I have money. I don't want to be in this school. So give me some money so I can go to that private school, that charter school, whatever it might be. And because there's so many different ideas out there in each state. I'll use Colorado as an example. Man, the charter schools just took off in the state of Colorado. I even looked at working at one of the charter schools and asked, what's the focus here? Well, they still report to school districts where the other schools are from, but it's typically been families that have resources, and they want an exclusive school that pushes their kids even further academically. And so, unfortunately, that's great for those kids. Honestly, it is. But we're missing the point is this population that isn't successful is going to be in the workforce and is going to support us or not support us. And if they don't have the skills, we as a country, we as a state, as an institution, a city, we're not going to be as successful because we just don't have enough employees that have the skill sets that are needed in the future. And so that's the struggle I have as we get older as the United States. Kansas is getting much, much older. We have far fewer students in the state of Kansas. And if you actually increase the number of students who don't have basic skills, we're not going to be successful as a state in terms of employment, in terms of outcomes. So that's my concern nationally is, again, the better questions to ask is, how can we help your school district that you want to get out of? How can we help them be successful?
So, as I understand the school choice program, referring back to something you said earlier, that what private schools tend to do, or when we shift money to private schools, it's just giving more money to people who can already afford it in most cases. And what the
Right.
school choice initiative does is exactly that. If I remember correctly, that that any parents who decide to send their child to a private school, they are going to get a pretty significant tax rebate or refund or something of that nature, correct? So it's not like the
Yeah.
government's giving them money to do that. It's going to come off of their taxes.
Right. Right. In a
Okay.
lot of cases, that's the way it's designed. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well,
So,
I went to public school, so I have no idea how these things work.
well, and, and again, you have to understand is that people in poverty have never had choices.
That's right.
And you're all of a sudden going to put choices out for them. So in the city of Wichita, some of these families drove 45 minutes. It's hard to believe it takes that long to get across town from the west, east, north, south to come to our school. So I'm a single parent doing two jobs, and you want me to drive my child 45 minutes over to the school that I would love to have him go. It's not going to happen. Because the school three blocks down the road, my son or daughter can walk to school. But if they don't have any resources, they're not attracting quality teachers. That pattern is not going to change.
So, Lamont, really, what the outcome of that kind of thinking or those kinds of initiatives are just going to create a further and further gap between educational institutions, right?
Yeah.
And
divisions will open up. Yeah.
Right. And if funding gets diverted, and public schools get less funding because of some of these ideas or thoughts or laws, and you have less money to pay, that's not only going to impact the education in the classroom, it's going to impact the supportive educational services as well. And it's going to impact the extracurricular kinds of experiences as well. I mean, it's a package deal. And not that I think people don't have the right to choose a public or a private education. It's really, in my book, it's who's going to pay for that. It's your right, and usually those private education services are funded by whether it's a religious organization or whatever it might be. It seems to me, you can push back if you like, but it seems to me that's where those resources need to come from and come through. Those who are involved with that organization, at least at the pre-college level.
Yeah, that's just it. Is they even have advancement offices that raise funds privately.
That's right.
If I go to a person that's making $22,000 a year and say, how much would you be willing to donate this year to our cause? Or I go to a person that's a 7-figure employee and income and say, how much would you be willing to donate? Those are completely different conversations. And so again, if they already have the resources, I'm not Catholic. I like the Catholic model at a lot of the institutions are you're tithing. It's 10% of whatever your income is, but you are welcome to come to our school, our K-12 school, and tithe. So they're trying to address the issue in terms of low income, high income, whatever it is, and then they're working from a business model. We hope we can pay everybody to do that. But the bottom line is I think we all know that is if you don't have good leaders, and I would call teachers leaders, if you don't have good people leading, it is so hard to be successful. And so the issue in higher education right now is the number of teachers going in teacher education programs has probably dropped in half. Because people can't see, how am I going to pay off my $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 debt loans by going and teaching for $40,000?
Yeah.
So they're being steered by parents. They're being steered by just the economics. I can't afford to go be a teacher, even though I'm passionate. I'd love to do that. And so that's a whole nother issue is what if those resources were allocated for teachers, leaders? Because I shared this with Lamar, is when I sat in front of a school board here, I asked them what made the best programs they were ever involved in: sports, music, drama, academics, whatever. And I said, just close your eyes and think about that. Okay, do you have a person in mind? Yeah. Or do you have a program in mind? And I said, was it the building that made that happen? Was it the textbook curriculum that made it happen? Or was it the leader in the classroom? Was it the teacher or the coach or whatever? And they all said, oh, it was the person. I said, there's your challenge. School boards have to attract and retain the best leaders. And if there's fewer and fewer people that are leading, and I come out of school with that kind of debt, guess what? Who's going to attract me? Is the school districts that have a lot of resources can have a higher salary rate versus the inner city schools, especially inner city schools that can't even find enough dollars because the roof's caving in. Right. So,
well, Lamont, we have a thing that we always ask our guests about, but before we do, something you said again just got my brain going on this, and I hope that we're just about out of time here, but I hope that maybe you'll come back and we can have this conversation. And it has to do with the transparency of private schools, particularly religiously affiliated private schools. I don't know if you've been on GuideStar recently.
No.
But when you look up private college prep schools that are religiously affiliated, many of them say, we are a religious organization, therefore we are not subject to completing a Form 990. I find that borderline offensive, because, if anybody should be transparent, it should be people that are following some kind of religious ethic. And in my denomination, I've looked up a number of our schools, same thing. We are a religious organization, therefore we are exempt. And then you go down, you read the description, and there's nothing in it that's really religious. They got sports. They're teaching teaching STEM, and it's like, that's not religious. That is education. So it might be really kind of interesting to have you come back at some point and talk with us about the transparency issues, because that's another way that public schools, in a way, are disadvantaged. Is that public schools,
no question,
have to be transparent. Private schools can do what they want to do in darkness.
Yes.
In the dark,
That's a good example. And the institution I was at was intentionally chose to be an independent school, take no state funds, because we don't have to say anything to you. We don't have to show you anything. And you just hope that whoever and whatever is guiding them are the right principles, values, and outcomes is what you hope. So, yeah.
Well, I hope you'll come back and talk to us about that at some point after we've had a chance to do a little more research on this. But that was just something I was noticing, and something you said kind of, got me thinking about it. Well, so here's our last two questions for you. We, in the last year or so, really had our conscience pricked by one of our guests about the whole idea of kindness and how it really relates to what we're trying to do in terms of having civil conversations about things that are not always easy to have conversations about. And so we've decided we're going to start asking our guests to talk to us just a little bit about kindness with 2 questions. The first one is this: tell us about an act of kindness that you have received that made a difference to you.
Well, it was just recent. We've had hardly any moisture or snow here, but we did have 8 and 10 inches in a snow. And I was looking at, recently retired, and I'm thinking, well, I got plenty of time to go shovel all the walks out here in front. And a lot of people walk down the college students walk down these sidewalks. Oh God, I don't want to go out in the sub-zero wind chill and go out there. And my next door neighbor was out there in coveralls because he had a snowblower, and he did my walk. And I thought, wow, that is really nice. It's not like we're really close, but he thought, I've got the machinery out. It's 8 inches. He's an old decrepit man now. He's retired. I'm going to go help him. And so I just thought, wow, that's cool. So yeah, that was a very much a random act that made a difference for me.
Yeah. Well,
And even forced me to go over and visit with him and tell him thank you. That meant a lot.
so it opened up a possibility of a relationship there. That's really nice.
Well, it certainly, we don't spend much time talking, even though we're right adjacent. But again, it created a conversation.
And so let's flip this a little bit. What's an act of kindness that you've done that you've hoped made a difference to somebody?
Well, that day it snowed another 2 inches, and I
Yeah.
thought, I'm going to go out. I have one of these new push kind of snow blowers that are battery operated that kind of work if it's light and not much snow.
Oh, you've been talking to Lamar, huh? He's trying to get me to buy one of those.
My wife bought it for me, and I thought, well, what a waste of money. There's no way that thing's going to work. They work. They work. And so I went out and did that. And my next door neighbor to the east, she works multiple jobs, and her walk had not been done at all. And so I thought, well, my next door neighbor took the time to help me speed my things up. So I just went on down my sidewalk, and I went a whole nother lot and cleaned off her whole front sidewalk. And she came out and she goes, oh my gosh, you didn't need to do that. And I said, well, Todd did it. And I just thought I might as well just do it too. So, I mean, again, when you have those experiences, it leads you to how can I support, reach out? So it was all associated to the same total 10 inches we got up here.
Yeah. So the ethic was, what would Todd do? And you
Yes.
I love that.
I do too. We got about a minute left. Do you have a question for us that's just been burning that you need to ask us?
Well, I'm just fascinated by bringing people together that might have opposite sides of an opinion. And I think that idea is, what can we agree on? What have you guys experienced when you bring people from opposite ends together? I'm fascinated by that.
Go ahead, Tom. I'll follow.
Thanks, Lamar. So what I've experienced is that preconceptions fade away as you establish relationship, and what you think you know about that person by a label they wear or something of that nature. As you talk with them and they talk with you, you can almost kind of see the assumptions go away.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Similar to that, Lamont, and we all know this, when you actually get to know someone and you've discussed things that you don't necessarily agree on, you find a lot of things that you do agree on. And oftentimes what you disagree on is less important than the things you agree on. And that allows relationships to build, respect to build. And I found that, first of all, very satisfying. And I've built some relationships that I don't think I would have built before.
Right.
but what I'm here, and I heard this the other day from someone who made a comment about, well, that's Lamar's friend, based off of what they heard on the podcast, and their initial response, or their response was, I couldn't have seen that person as someone that I respected or that I found interesting, but after hearing them talk together, I'm changing my mind. There's more about that person than I thought. And I think that's also an extension of what we do, what we're trying to do here, is to model that we can learn from each other. Now, in this conversation, we pretty much agreed on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we were learning. But that doesn't mean that the topic is something that we all necessarily agree on politically. And these are opportunities for us to open our brain and be respectful and learn, as well as kind of come to our own conclusions. So those are the things I picked up. This has been a really good personal experience for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, because normal human nature is you don't lean into people that that you have some differences with. You don't try to create a relationship, and yet you guys are doing that. And I'm fascinated by that, because as I've leaned into politicians, I don't like politicians just in general, but when I lean into that with healthcare, I am fascinated by the discussions, just like you two are having, how we can come to an agreement about some things, and the relationship changes. I mean, it's not, there's not anger. There's not, okay, we agree on these things. How can we continue to move together versus separately? And it's fascinating. I've got some politicians that we get together regularly. We have lunch, and those discussions have changed completely, because they don't look at right and left. Tell us what is going on in your world, and tell us what's going on in your world. And the conversation changes.
Yeah. Well, very good. That's cool.
Lamont, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you
really
guys for doing this kind of thing. Yeah. This is awesome.
Well, good. Glad you like it, and please enjoy the 460 some avocados that Lamar.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get my spoon and my knife out, and I'll get busy.
Yeah. Right. If you give me a call, I'll bring the chips.
Okay. All right. Deal.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Well, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Lamont has a wealth of information and opinions, like we all have. Yeah. And appreciated his experience that he brought to the table. What's your thoughts, Tom?
Well, unlike us, he seems like he does know diddly squat.
That's correct.
As well as have opinions. I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought it was interesting. It helped answer some questions for me that I had after our really good conversation with Steve Owens. Yeah. And I'll tell you what sticks with me from this conversation. It is this idea, and I didn't really know how to express it, but I think he did a nice job of expressing it for me, and I hope I can get it right here. But that all of our efforts around school vouchers and school choice and that tend to reward and support the people that actually don't need the support. And so this gap grows. And it's an education gap, but it's also a wealth gap, and I think that's what I find really, really troubling about the private school movement and the school choice movement in our country. As a kid that went to a very public school, it's very public. It sounds like it was like on top of a mountain or something. No, it was a public school, and private schools were not really options. And where I grew up, and I don't think there were too many options for private schools either. Where you grew up 20 miles from me, but I just really appreciated hearing him explain to me what I was feeling, but I couldn't quite give words to, because that's not my background.
Well, in actuality, Tom, there was a private school opportunity where I was, because of my church affiliation. There was an Iowa Mennonite school up about 35 miles
Oh,
away.
up in Kelowna, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Which is still there. It's called Hillcrest. But so that was an option. But what I really was interested in, and he hit it right off the bat at the beginning, and he talked about the people who tend to be making the decisions about the funding don't have a lot of resources with the professionals in the area. Of being able to sit down with those folks and really understand the nuances of public and private education and the impact that financing has on the outcomes of student success. So I thought that was just well done, and I think it made a lot of difference for me to hear.
Yeah. I think if there was any one piece that seemed really quotable to me, there were lots of things because he's very articulate, very good. But the thing that just kind of leapt out to me, I asked him the question about the correlation, or is there even a causal relationship between proficiency scores and success, getting into college and being successful. And his answer rather shocked me. He says there's not really a correlation there, but there is a clear correlation between proficiency scores and wealth.
Yeah, right.
I go, oh, all right.
Well, food for thought going forward.
Indeed.
And this has been an interesting little path that we took, and appreciate LaMonte coming on and helping us think it through some more. And I'm hoping that people share this podcast, because even though we talked a lot about Kansas, what's going on in Kansas can be seen very similarly across the country.
That's right.
And that maybe the actual funding mechanisms or the strategies are a little different, but by and large, they're very similar. So I would encourage people to take a look and see what's going on in their state and how they might want to impact that, how they might want to have conversation about what's happening and how they feel.
And in the meantime, we all learned a lot more about this subject today. So, well, Lamar, have a really great week.
Okay.
Do something fun.
You know what's coming, Tom.
What?
The weather's getting better.
Golf.
Golf for you, camping for me.
Tom here. Thank you for listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. Remember to click on subscribe to get notices about new episodes, and be sure to like and share the podcast as well. Opinions and ideas expressed in this podcast are solely those of Lamar Roth and Tom Klaus, and we'd like to hear your opinions and ideas too. You can leave us a voice message on Spotify, or you can email us at the addresses found in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, you can find links to some of the things we talked about today, so you can check them out yourself. Until next time, keep moving forward toward third space.
This podcast was reviewed and approved by Jake and Ebby Dogs Incorporated.